นับสนุนโดยปูนอินทรีย์ปูนดีได้ดั่งใจ
เมื่อเข้าสู่ยุคดิจิทัลครองเมืองทุกอย่างย่อมต้องปรับตัวเพื่อความอยู่รอดไม่เว้นแม้แต่หนังสือพิมพ์ที่ไม่ยอมตายหายจากโลกนี้ไปไหนในช่วง10 กว่าปีที่ผ่านมาจึงเกิดกระแสหนังสือพิมพ์แจกฟรีขึ้นคนไม่ต้องจ่ายเงินซื้อหนังสือพิมพ์อีกต่อไปหนังสือพิมพ์หารายได้จากการโฆษณาแทนหนังสือพิมพ์ถูกแจกฟรีตามจุดชุมชนต่างๆอย่างเช่นรถไฟใต้ดินเพื่อให้เข้ากับไลฟ์สไตล์ของคนรุ่นใหม่ที่รวดเร็วและฉับไวปัจจุบันกระแสหนังสือพิมพ์แจกฟรีแรงขึ้นเรื่อยๆมีหนังสือพิมพ์แจกฟรีในกว่า30ประเทศทั่วโลกจำนวน20ล้านฉบับต่อวันและมีผู้อ่านมากถึง40ล้านคนต่อวันจากที่ตีพิมพ์ขนาดใหญ่แบบบรอดชีทมาเป็นเวลานานมาตอนนี้เพื่อตอบรับความสะดวกรวดเร็วฉับไวตามไลฟ์สไตล์ที่เปลี่ยนไปหนังสือพิมพ์หลักๆทั่วโลกกำลังมีขนาดเล็กลงอย่างในอเมริกาหนังสือพิมพ์ก็มีแนวโน้มที่จะแคบขึ้นและยาวขึ้นความเล็กของหนังสือพิมพ์ทำให้ถืออ่านได้สะดวกและอ่านจบได้อย่างรวดเร็วในระยะเวลาการเดินทางสั้นๆบนรถไฟฟ้าหรือรถเมล์ที่สวิตเซอร์แลนด์สเปนและฝรั่งเศสมีหนังสือพิมพ์แจกฟรีชื่อว่า20 minutes หรือแปลว่า20นาทีตามระยะเวลาที่คนจะใช้อ่านหนังสือพิมพ์นั้นและขณะนี้ทุก2ปีจะมีหนังสือพิมพ์ขนาดกระทัดรัดเกิดขึ้น
The new trend of free newspapers around the world, is it catching on?
Absolutely. There are those who say that the newspaper in 20 years, all newspapers will have some form of free publication, and I think that will make them more accessible, and they will be making their revenue from their website editions and from advertising in general. For example, a newspaper like Express will now have an appeal to a number of readers that advertisers cannot access at all through a printed medium. These are readers who do not read The Nation or the Bangkok Post or the International Herald Tribune. The readers of free newspapers are going to find them there and spend 15 minutes with them, but that is an audience that you could not capture with the best coverage in The Nation or the Bangkok Post or any of these newspapers.
Why so? Because it's more available and it's done to attract their attention more than before.
Absolutely. As I said, these are designed for that audience in mind, for the elusive audience that is in a hurry, but that photo and that headline might grab me, and in 10 seconds they get it and it's there. You distribute your distribution points are schools, universities, trains, buses, stores, galleries, and so it's already there. It entices you and it has big photos. You don't think you have to work to get through this newspaper. You don't have 10 stories with text in there that say, read me. No. This front page says, look at me.
How did this trend start, the free sheet?
It began in Sweden with the Metro newspapers, and they now have 58 editions worldwide, from New York to London to major cities of the world. And I think the idea was, why are so many people in trains and buses and so on sitting there either sleeping or with their iPods on and so on and not reading? Well, newspapers were not accessible there. You have to go and buy them. And these people were not, these age groups are not really preconditioned to buying a newspaper, what you were saying. Grandpa did this, and maybe my father already did not do so much of this, or my mother, and now I don't care, you know. So accessibility, they control, that's why they are called Metro. You would have them before you go into the subways in New York or in Stockholm or in Norway, anywhere, you will find stacks of newspaper. It's there. You grab it, and they were meant to be read in 3 or 4 stops. I'm thinking that in Bangkok, the stops are too frequent and the SkyTrain is too short a distance. So maybe this is more like a 6 or 7 stop read. But that was the idea. And when you finish, and maybe somebody else picks it up and reads it. It was never meant to be taken home. It was never be meant to be a long read, and that's why they succeeded. In a world of fast food and instant gratification, they did that. They filled the space of your 15-minute commute.
But before Metro, the word free newspaper or free sheet had a bad name because it was supposed to be something that was cheap, full of advertisements maybe,
yes, yeah.
but
they were
the
shoppers.
content,
They were shoppers.
Yeah. So how did the Metro make that differentiation?
They gained respectability by concentrating on world news and local features. You know, people could see stories of the fire last night. They could see stories about the school board meeting. They could see stories about people they knew, their neighbors, and that gave it respectability. The second thing that began to happen is many of them, for example, the Free Newspaper of Washington, the Examiner, they began to have not just, I said they used to have legs, they used to run from here to there. They began to have a soul, editorials, columns. They do now. And so once you put that, the newspaper now had a way to present the news breezy, in a breezy way to you. At the same time, you were able to get opinions to guide you in the city. Columnists who were usually the same age as the people that they were intended to appeal to. So this is why, and this is still in development. Newspapers, for example, the Times of London produces the London paper. A lot of the established newspapers decided to do a free newspaper of their own, and in many cases with great success.
And why are newspapers shrinking in size around the world?
Well, I think that it was about time that this happened. I think that people prefer to read smaller newspapers. You know, they don't want to, a couple having breakfast in the morning, they don't even have to see each other. You know, I think that the compact newspapers will do a lot to spark up romance in the lives of people who've been married for 30 and 40 years, you know. Because they at least...
It took us so long to discover that, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. You don't have this curtain in front of you. If you're sitting on the train, on a plane, if you're in the economy section, 3 seats, and everybody has a copy of a broadsheet.
That's right.
Problems. The advertisers benefit.
No, the Japanese, the way they read the newspapers in the subway.
They fold them.
Yeah, this is something we learned from the Japanese newspaper readers. They do this. And, you know, in a very cramped subway, they could do it. But we, in an airplane, we do this, you know.
Right.
We spread our elbows and everything.
And if 3 passengers across each other do that,
you're going to have a fight.
You're going to have a fight. So I think that it's the tendency of everything to get smaller cameras and computers and everything that we manage. You know, as I said, with the exception of television sets and airplanes, everything tends to be smaller. And I think that we now call them compacts because in some societies, tabloids have a perception of being a down market sort of police news and sex and so on. That is not the case. You know, now some of the best dailies in the world, like the Wall Street Journal, the Times of London, they've gone to the compact format, and there is a whole generation of people. If they are under 40, they do not associate compact formats with sensationalism. It's only the older generation that still sees that as crime and sex and, you know, less than respectable publications. So the compact format is the future, even smaller than Express.
How important is brand in the new world of journalism, websites, and digital life? Used to be that the brand is very important. You talk about the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, then you have certain kind of loyalty that this is your newspaper.
Well, there is credibility.
Credibility.
You know that these brands that you've mentioned will triple check their facts. They don't sensationalize. That for most of the time they are not biased. That they, you know, that will report the story as it was. And so brand is the one thing that newspapers, that printed newspapers that have been there for a number of years have to offer is their brand. You know, because brands have the, as I said, the respectability, the credibility. So one of the important things that we learn in research is that it's more difficult to preserve the brand online. When we've had questions of people who've been reading news for 30 minutes
Yep.
on websites.
Yep.
At the end of the research, we asked the question, what did you find out about what happened in Afghanistan last night? And they tell you. What happened with the American elections last night? This is what happened. And then you say, where did you get it from? I don't know, because I went through 6 websites, so I have no idea. The people in the same study
Yep.
who had read it in one newspaper
Yep.
had no question. I say, I read it in the Washington Post, or I read it in the Miami Herald.
That's right.
I think that the whole idea of putting both hands on a piece of paper, the concentration, I suppose, when you are reading The Nation, you're not flipping through 3 newspapers simultaneously.
No.
When you're here, you can go from one link to the other, and at the end of the day, you got all your information, you got all your food, your stomach is full, but you have no idea what the source was. So that's why we encourage in the design of websites that the name of that newspaper website be on every screen, so that people are subconsciously reminded of where they're getting the information from.
So that's the advantage of a newspaper migrating to online
Yes.
as compared to a website that has no brand
Absolutely.
or original brand in the
It's
print
very
media.
difficult for a new website to establish a brand. But when you put the brand that you have established and worked at for 40 years, 100 years, or
Yep.
whatever here,
Yep.
that is the one big advantage that you have before you even start.
How is life as a former journalist and now a newspaper design in this digital world?